Say we want to convert the simple todo applications that's making some CRUD operations in todo items. We want to convert it from monolithic architecture into microservices architecture, and we want to deploy this solution to Kubernetes. So we are going to have these configurations. We are going to have a development environment with two web API application, two microservices, one for read and write operations, the original one, and the other will be serving get all those requests that be upskilled. So we are going to call the first one read write microservice, and the other one is reader microservice. We're going to have unit tests for each of them, and we are going to implement or deploy it locally on local Kubernetes environment that will use Docker Desktop. Also, we are going to have CI/CD GitOps operations that will run on GitHub to run the unit tests and deploy our new code or application images for each microservice to the online Kubernetes service, and we're going to use Azure. So here to have a look at the architecture change from monolithic solutions that typically um, this monolithic solution has typical application with two endpoints, and it has a unit test and connect to SQL Server. And we're going to convert this to a microservices architecture where we're going to have two Docker containers, and each one is running the is running a different microservice. So we have the read write microservice serving the get totals endpoint, where we're going to have another container for the other microservice, which will read get all totals endpoint. Each of them is going to have unit tests, and each of them are going to is going to connect to SQL Server database. So let's have a look at the local development environment for this. We're going to have a Visual Studio solution, and we're going to have two web API projects, one for each microservice. We're going to deploy the YAML deployments using YAML deployments to a local Kubernetes environment that's running on Docker Desktop that will create our images and uh, using load balancer ingress. It's going to orchestrate between the two microservices containers using services, and also our database SQL Server container using Kubernetes networking. And uh, let's have a look at this. Also, for the architecture, for the deployment architecture, we're going to have a cloud load balancer with Ingress, and it's going to serve our two microservices containers and connect to a SQL Server database. Let's look at the development environment and see how it works. We have solution with two web APIs, and we have each project for a service. On the tools controller for the read write service, we're having get tools endpoint. In the tools controller in the reader service, we're having get all totals endpoint. And let's see how this is serving locally. So if we hold for the get totals it will serve from the microservice, read write microservice, and when we get all orders, we will serve from the um, reader microservice. And if we have a look at the Swagger, we have the the read write microservice is not serving get all orders, but this get all orders can be served from the other microservice. Let's have a look at the CI/CD, GitOps or DevOps GitHub actions that will uh, mm, deploy our code changes when we want to update a microservice, and is going to build it for us and deploy to Kubernetes services. It's first it will build the two microservices and separately and run unit tests for each of the microservices. And when the unit tests are successful, it's going to replace environment variables for SQL database and for Kubernetes settings. It's going to create a new Docker image for this version of application, and it's going to push this image to a container registry. In this case, we are using Azure, and it's going to deploy our new images and a new version of application to the Kubernetes services on the environment that we want to. Let's try to do some change and see it working. Set a new endpoint to the reader uh, microservice. It's going to work on the endpoint test get and see how this reflects on the Gitops and Kubernetes deployment. In our Kubernetes services, we can see that we have the two microservices running. One is get orders, and another is for get all orders. And if we try test get now, it's not going to work. That's because our workflows are still running. We passed the first workflow for building the microservices and running the unit tests. And we will see what will happen after we finish the deployment and creating the new Docker images and deploy it to Azure uh, uh, Kubernetes services. Well, it looks like our GitOps worked fine. Let's see how this reflected on the test get endpoint. Let's test the new endpoint, test get, and it's working. It was added to the uh, get all totals. It's a reader microservice. We have just added the new endpoint and it was deployed using GitOps. And if we have a look at the Swagger, that's the read write endpoint, it doesn't have this new endpoint. And that's it. And thank you.